Hi friends, I'm Scott Giles, minister, hypnotist, and the guy who shows you how to get help from the other side. The other side being the mental and spiritual worlds, which you access through your unconscious mind, which is the greatest goal-achieving mechanism ever evolved. You don't have to stay stuck or ill or be unhappy because there is a power that can help. Well, today I want to talk about getting older. As Mae West once said, getting older ain't for sissies, and I think those of us who have a bit of years on our frame will agree with that. I sometimes joke that I have absolutely no idea how I ever came to be the same age as all of those old people. But aging is preferable to the alternative of not aging. My doctor has me working with a medical service called Cadence. That is when they issue you a home blood pressure cuff and other biological monitors, and you administer these tests to yourself every day, and it sends the information to a main server, and a health coach will call you if there's any concern. Well, the health coach called me as I was getting started with this, and the script that she was using asked me, well, what are your lifetime goals for this chapter of your life? And I responded by saying that, well, I kind of follow a recommendation by the great American poet Walt Whitman, who in his epic poem Leaves of Grass said, I announce the coming of a race of splendid and savage old men. So that's what I want to be. I want to become a splendid and savage old man. To which the coach replied, well, I don't seem to find that on my drop-down menus in my software. We tend to become more of what we are as we age. I mean, we all have a personality style with both pros and cons. We learn to compensate for the downside of our personality style as we age. But as time moves on, we also begin to realize that some of that just isn't worth the investment. There isn't enough return on investment to keep submerging part of who you are to make other people like you more. We discover it just isn't worth it. There's a lot of mental bandwidth that goes to things that are not actually important. And so as a result, we begin to stop compensating for the downside of our personality, and we just start accepting our personality, good and bad both. Now, I've always been a little bit of a weird person myself. I mean, I come from an upbringing that was, well, it was a train wreck, is what it was, and it created me to be a very self-contained and self-reliant person. I quickly realized that the fact that I come from a lower class background meant that many people from upper class society would never be completely comfortable with me. And when I realized that, it encouraged me to simply stop trying for their approval. Instead, I learned to live my life for my own approval. I know my values, my lifestyle, my beliefs, my personal code. If others like it, great. And if they don't, it really doesn't matter to me. Accordingly, I ceased seeking the approval of others a very long time ago, and I recommend you do the same. If you need the approval or notice of others, you're actually giving them a measure of control over your life, and that's never a good idea. Now, throughout my career, I've typically been in spiritual direction, that is, working with a religious professional who guides your spiritual formation. The person I like the most these days is Father Richard Rohr, and I'm going to recommend his book, Falling Upward, A Spirituality for the Two Halves of Life. What Rohr teaches is that unless one's life is terminated early by accident or disease, we can think of life as two distinct projects as we move from birth to death. The first project is to get established. We grow up, we put in effort, we make mistakes, trade-offs. We figure out how to survive in the world and maybe even how to prosper. But the second half of life is different. The battles are already fought. We already have whatever kingdom we're going to establish. And so the task of the second half of life is to kind of fill out the decisions we made in the first half. Any mistakes in the first half of life can be interpreted as experiments that helped us settle on what our life should be. And that's important because a lot of people live their life with anxiety about the present and depression about the past. We look back, and because the brain remembers negative stuff better than good stuff, we tend to remember all the bad stuff that have happened to us over the arc of our life. And we feel bad about that. But if instead you realize that any mistake or misstep you made as you were getting your life established was simply experiments that you needed to run to figure out how to prosper, well, that's comforting. And then in the second half of life, you harvest the return on the investment of those experiments. You figure out how to be happy with who you've become, how to maximize the benefit of the decisions you've made and the path you've chosen. That's what we need to do as we seek to become who we should be as we age. We become more of who we were created to be as we get older because we stop compensating trying to please other people. And as we look back over the decisions we've made in the first half of life, we see them as learning experiences. And in the second half of life, we try to benefit from those learnings. Check it out. I think you'll find if you think about the arc of your life in this way, it will be very helpful. And thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject. If you're wondering if I can be of help to you, consider working directly with me. We can work in person or online. Feel free to reach out through my website for a complimentary, no-obligation discovery call, and always use the full power of your mind. You deserve it.